Welcome to the demo for the Rule of Law project. My name is Chu Feng. My team and I created a prototype for this project which I would like to demonstrate to you in this video. But before we get into the demo, you will probably ask, what exactly is rule of law and why should we care? Well, in simple words, rule of law is the authority and influence of law in society. Still sounds complicated? Well, the concept of rule of law is often hard to explain, and that's one of the main reasons why we started this project. Because we think by combining rule of law with a good story, some data visualizations, and social networks, we can influence all over the world. Therefore, we came up with the idea of a rule of law infographic, and we believe by illustrating the rule of law with an aspect of our life, it will be more informative and easier for people to understand. So now let's get into the prototype demo. So this is our prototype for rule of law and corruption. The reason why we pick corruption is because it's still a very big issue in some countries, and it's somehow related to rule of law. So on top of the infographic, we started by telling a story about the property issue related to corruption, which can happen in some countries. We think that stories can often have the reader's attention easier than the data and the text. You can pause the video and read the story. We think the story is really easy to understand and is common in some countries as well. Okay, so next we put the data and the graph right after the storyboard to give the reader a more in-depth visualization of the relationships between rule of law and corruption. So as you can see here, we have the correlations between the rule of law index and corruption perception index, and the correlations between the rule of law index and the absence of corruption. You may have noticed that these lines are highly overlaid with each other. So like this shows that normally if a country has a high rule of law index, it's most likely less corrupted and vice versa. And now let's take one country for example. So if we zoom in and see, so for example, New Zealand. Okay, so New Zealand, as you can see on the graph, the New Zealand has a very high rule of law index compared to other countries. It has almost so it has almost a 90 for the rule of law index, and it also has the CPI index, which stands for corruption perception index. So New Zealand has the CPI index of about 82 or 83. So this means that New Zealand is much less corrupted than most of the other countries in this graph. So we hope by putting these two graphs in this infographic, people will have some basic understanding of the correlations between rule of law and corruption. And finally, we wrote down some text at the bottom to provide a formal explanation of why rule of law is important and why it is worth advocating all over the world. So after reading the infographic, if you think you want to take some actions and make contributions, you can go to LexisNexis website for more information. And that concludes our demo for the rule of law infographic. Thank you.